Executive Officer of the California Air Resources Board, and among other things, he has been one of the central people in designing the famous California emission trading. So please, the floor is yours.
All right, and good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair, and distinguished members here. It's really an honor to be able to speak with you. And I have some slides that I'd like to talk with you about, but I'm adapting a little bit just based on listening to some of the remarks over the course of this morning. So a little context, and I'll do this pretty quickly, in terms of our agency. So as noted, I'm the director of the agency, been for 7 years, been with the agency 34 years. And California Air Resources Board is a state agency in California charged with our air quality and climate program, basically implementing. We implement, we enforce. We are the ones that discovered the VW fraud. In fact, I authorized or signed the consent decree in terms of that agreement with the Department of Justice. But a few things I want to make an overall observation. It's a story. I'll tell a short story. In California, about the time CARB, our agency, was created, 50 years ago, we had very serious air quality issues in Los Angeles and other parts of the state. So if you think about this, we had, back in the late 60s, 16 million people driving 8 million cars, an economy of about 150 billion US, and the number of exceedances of our health-based ozone standards, basically multiples of unhealthy levels in Southern California, 200 times a year. 200 times a year we are exceeding those unhealthy levels. Basically, where children shouldn't play outdoors, athletes shouldn't exercise outdoors, basically very serious air quality problems. And if you fast forward to today and think about, well, what's progress has been made, the state has 40 million people, population, an economy of about 2.6 trillion. Those vehicles drive about 370 billion miles. And we have not had a stage 1 or stage 2 ozone alert for about 15 years. A car today is 99% cleaner, 99% than it was in that time frame. And it really comes from authority we have in the California Clean Air Act to establish standards that were ultimately adopted by the United States. And that's clearly an area where we are engaged in a conflict with the Trump administration concerning that authority. Also during that time frame, or the last several years, California was also given authority, my agency, to develop a climate plan, an overall climate strategy for achieving GHG reductions. And we really believe we were given that authority because of our historical air quality role. And we met our target, our 2020 target, which was to get back to 1990 emissions by 2020. We met that in 2016. We also reduced our diesel PM emissions near our ports by about 80% in the last 15 years. Now, the reason I say all this is not because, I certainly like to brag about California, but that's not actually why I'm bringing this up. The reason I'm bringing this up is, and I thought a lot about this, is what are those elements that have contributed to that progress? And when I say progress, we certainly have major air quality problems we need to continue to work on. We clearly have a climate challenge we need to work on with the state, the United States, and globally, no doubt about that. But if I think about the elements of that progress, there were clear targets established in law. There was political support. There was support by the public. There was the ability to monitor and track progress in a transparent way, whether we're making it or not. It's out there for the world to see. It's critical to be able to do that. Partnerships. California CARB did not do this on its own. We never could have. It's always been about investment, and it's always been about a relationship with industry partners, with the environmental community and the environmental justice community. And it's been, at the end of the day, results. You can talk a good game. If ultimately you're not seeing results coming from it, you're not going to, one, You're not going to retain support. We know that. You're also not going to attract partners. And when I say results, not only do they pertain to emission reductions, they pertain to what has happened to the economy. If the results of those policies were industry was being pushed out by leakage and operating somewhere else, those are failed policies. These policies have to create economic opportunity or they won't work. And when I say that, I think about some of the progress made. We have manufacturing that's come to the state, Tesla and motor vehicle cars, electric buses, electric delivery vans. 75% of the venture capital investment in clean fuels in North America is taking place in California.
Thank you. And the next speaker is from Latvia, Mr. Atis Lejiņš.
Yes, thank you. I would like to make a comment to Richard Curry and also have a question for him. I used to live in Los Angeles in the 1960s, and I can completely corroborate what he said, that Los Angeles was not livable. That's why I fled in 1970. And when I came back in 1986, the air was clean. It was amazing what California did with what, and Mr. Corey described how he did it. We can do it in Europe too, if they could do it, and it was much worse there. Now, the question is, you had a waiver for the American federal emissions law, that you had a waiver that you that you could be greener than the law said, that you had that you could have higher emission standards than the rest of America. Now, last week, Trump lifted this waiver. Now, you're back where the rest are. But you said you have better cooperation with other states in America and institutions. How are you going to deal with this waiver that does not allow you to have better standards than federal law says? Is this a court action? And if it's a court action, will you win? And how can you base it on a court action if it's federal law? Thank you.
One point I want to make quickly that I should have added to the overall remarks that I made, and that is, in terms of the principles that I touched on, action is at its foundation. And I also realize, all of us realize, that that action took place with imperfect information, because we're never going to have it. It was get the best science together and move forward with a willingness to make adjustments as we implement. But to the gentleman's question about the waiver, I think that's the one I want to take on first, because I like the question and I like it's an interesting issue. So historically, just quickly context, in the Federal Clean Air Act, for the last 50 years, California has been given unique authority because of its air quality challenges to establish motor vehicle standards. So our agency, my agency, has established standards for cars, trucks, and so on that haven't just become California standard, they're the national standards. The national government has adopted those, and over the years, we've been issued 100 waivers over the last several decades. So it was a very unique situation recently with the Trump administration revoking a waiver. And I was asked, I think, the question, well, how will you proceed? Well, we have a regulation on the books. We're continuing to implement that regulation. At the same time, we will challenge administration. We already have 25 lawsuits, I think, my organization, against the Trump administration. And why am I confident? Law, science, facts, and history. We'll challenge them. We are, and we'll continue to. And the fact of the matter is, there's a reason why the automakers have said they didn't want what the Trump administration proposed. There's a reason why they approached us to reach a side agreement, and that fundamental reason is certainty. The path that the Trump administration provides creates a series of losers. Consumers lose through wasting fuel that they wouldn't otherwise have to waste. It costs money. Climate loses because GHG emissions don't go down, they actually increase. Health suffers, not just from a climate, but from criteria pollutant related emissions. The only winners in this scenario is oil. The only winner. So on those fundamental grounds in our history, of a successful program and the authority granted in the Clean Air Act, we will aggressively challenge this and go after this. And the fact of the matter is, it will take years to play out in courts. Not a year, years. And while that plays itself out, we'll continue to partner with the oil companies. That's the path that we have taken, and will continue to play itself out. Few other comments I'll get to relatively quickly. The comment about local action, and it really gets to the observation I just made about, well, the feds are going backwards on climate. But if you look at historically, where's the real action taking place? It is in states, it's in cities, it's within climate action plans, it's those jurisdictional partnerships. We're continuing, and the point that I made in my remarks is as straight up factually accurate. Our partnerships across the United States with multiple states, over 24, as well as jurisdictions around the world, are stronger than ever. We're continuing to implement those programs.